Hi everyone, video 16. We're looking at line becoming shape and possibly shape becoming line again. Now I want to make this a bit of a tribute to Susan Rothenberg, who passed away sadly a day or two ago. She's been a big part of our teaching at the school here. She's been a big part of the slide presentations and the discussions, and I think she's been a wonderful artist, and I think helped along the road to progressing our work and ideas and so on. So she's sadly missed, but anyway, I just wanted to look at this painting of hers, and at first glance we see two horses, and large painting, acrylic and tempera on canvas, double masked heads as the title, was painted in 1974, and it's 65 inches by 78 and a half. So it's a large painting, and she quite often worked large like this. The whole painting is activated. She has these small energized brush strokes that go right out to the edges, to the four edges, and which makes the edges and the negative spaces just as important as the forms that she's depicting. And this painting is very much about figure-ground relationships. Rothenberg herself said that she did not want to paint the figure initially, anyway, in the early part of her career, but she was looking for a substitute, a vehicle that would carry that sort of information, but without actually having to depict a real person, which I find an interesting position. So anyway, she hit upon the horses, and so I'm going to call them horses, but they're really it's really about, this painting's really about the figure-ground relationship. Anyway, we're looking at the dark shapes, and I find the more I look at these dark shapes, the more they disengage from the actual image and function as part of the ground. In other words, part of the negative space. So she's making us look at two things. She's making us look at the image, and she's making us look at the shapes that make up the image as independent forces within the composition. And I find that very, very sophisticated. It looks simple, but then the more you look at it and find what she's doing with those shapes and the way she's morphing them into the picture plane, into the ground, is quite incredible. The other thing too is, if we look at these, focus on these dark shapes, yes, it's part of the horse. It's also shape as shadow, dark shape as leg, as back, as head, etc. And then, but is it a shape or is it a line? So this is getting back to our original idea about with line, line functioning as a contour, but then also as an independent energy to create movement in the composition. Well, here we see line becoming shape and still having that energy, movement energy, and still being part of the image. So she's giving us shape and line as a multi-function force in the composition. Okay, moving on from the Susan Rothenberg, we're now looking at Shen, who's the young New York artist that we looked at in our Zoom conference a week ago. And this is another interesting example of the function of shape, I think, and an example also where shape is given dominance over line. And I think also the colour harmony in this painting is worth talking about, and it shows clearly excuse the function of grey as a quieting force, the function of grey as um, a passive area against which the brighter and more intense colours, the reds, the yellows, and even the lime green, can, you know, have more of a voice. So I think also we can see, you know, the minimal use of line as a contour, and really it's the edge of the shape and the contrast between it and the next territory or the next shape that creates the contrast and enables the eye to move from one to the other. Yes, there is a little bit of outlining, but it's done fairly carefully. The other thing that's worth noting in this picture is the way Mona uses drawing to clarify the figures, and they're not realistic figures. They're just really more shape than figures, but they're a figurative presence, you know, a poetic presence, and a you know, almost humorous presence in the composition. And you know, this is she once again, she wants to be able to use the figure, but not in a literal way. We had a brief talk about colour recently, and here we can see, you know, well, let's take the red for instance, red in almost its full strength, and then in the big shape on the left, to contrast against that brightness, we have a dull red. So we see Johann Itten's theory coming into place there, you know, bright versus dull, light versus dark in the yellow patch surrounding the central figures. And we see tints, you know, we see colour with white added to varying degrees, and we see shades to in the dark blue, the ultramarine blue, I'm guessing here, but looks like ultramarine blue. You know, the dark to contrast the light. But anyway, really clear use of shape here, I think, and judicious use of linear elements. Quite a beautiful painting. Another beautiful Mona Shen painting, 2019 to 2018, a large picture, 60 inches by 80, oil on canvas. And once again, we see shape used in a really free and painterly way. We also see lots of layering with, you know, she's careful about when she puts a new layer over to leave bits of the underlying painting coming through. So that's giving us the history, the start, the middle, and the finish. Now going back to our colour theory again, which we'll be getting onto next term, we've got a good, I think here, good balance of tints and shades, and you know, we have these multiple contrasts, you know, a light to balance a dark, a dull to balance a bright, a warm to balance a cool. And I haven't got a cursor here, so it's a bit hard for me to point, but if we take the yellow square in the middle left panel, we can see the warm cool contrast there. So yellow moving or stopping and opposed by a blue, looks like a cerulean blue, and then directly on the bottom, and then to the left of the yellow we see a tint of green, a viridian green or a phthalo green, but still warm, opposing cool. And that helps us to move and to transition into the surrounding territory. We find sometimes in painting that the contrasts are too similar, and we get stuck. The eye can't move, and the eye should be moving all the time. If the eye stops, it's usually for a reason, because it's ambiguous, it's not clear, or we can't quite work out what's going on. Now, I just want to look at the big dark shape on the left of this picture. We talked about resonant darks, when you mix shades, when you mix black or a dark color to get darks that still have some luminosity. And if we look at that dark shape, we can see a very dark magenta / purple, either mixed with it or put over the top of it. So it creates, it separates the black form, the black figure, but it also, as a dark color, balances out the tints. It's predominantly a painting made with, by adding white to the colors, but that is balanced by shades on the left, and darker areas of drawing throughout the rest of the composition. So there's lots of contrasts operating there. Light, dark, all the major contrasts: light, dark, warm, cool, bright, dull. Each of those should have a place somewhere in the work. We also see, we go back to that central yellow shape that sort of straddles both panels right in the middle. We see yellow there opposing its complementary, which is violet. So it's a tinted yellow opposing a tinted violet. We see, in other areas, we see blue opposing orange. We see green opposing red. So, seems to me, as I look at it, all the major contrasts are operating here. Probably the bright, dull one is harder to find, but I think it's there in that dark shape on the left. Okay, I'm gonna wrap up this video now. I hope it's been useful to everybody, and I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow, Friday, in Zoom. I'm hoping to get this out today, but fingers crossed.